Thank you for tuning in. I believe everyone who's watching right now is part of the solution that I'm creating. This channel is called Master Media, and my name is Jessica, and I'm your host. The purpose of this show is to together, everybody, recreate our future. And we do this by focusing on every major topic and area and industry that matter most to us both today and for the future. And I think if we do this, we can solve every major problem we're currently facing, from poverty to war to lack of jobs to global warming. And I believe that if we take the time, if I take the time to interview top leaders and innovators in every major area that I just listed, and there are others, I think we can give a microphone and a voice to those who have the answers. Because I believe that we cannot simply rely on our governments. We can't rely on solutions and systems that we've relied on so far up until today. Those serve their purpose and laid the groundwork, I believe. But I believe we're currently undergoing a revolution, a global revolution, where it's time to rebuild, to remake ourselves. And I believe we need to do this crowdsource style, meaning we call on everyone, that's anyone, in every major area, as I said. We give them a microphone and a voice to share the solutions they have. And in doing so, we not only educate ourselves, starting with myself, but we also create new business and new solutions by bringing in private money, private equity from the private sector. I believe with the solutions together, we can recreate our future. We don't have to rely on our governments. We can do it. So that's the point and purpose of the show. We'll tackle one subject, one industry at a time. So I'm very excited. This has been a long time coming. It's been my vision to do this for a few years now. But with all my different experience, background in politics and hemp and cannabis and now blockchain and crypto, it's time. Like a seed, things take time to blossom. So our time has come, and let's get started. Welcome to Master Media. My name is Jessica, and I'm your host. This show is focused on best practices in the crypto space, as well as focused on highlighting the top alt projects in the space that deserve to be acknowledged, primarily because of their huge role in reshaping our world and the systems that currently control and govern our world. In today's show, we interview Kyle Chassé, CEO and founder of Master Ventures, a crypto venture studio, CEO and founder of House of DAO, a crypto-focused emerging tech micronation, and CEA, comparable to NASDAQ, but in the crypto space. So it's a huge honor to interview you today, Kyle. Thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely. And for our audience watching, I think it's incredible that you are now focusing and sharing your knowledge through your YouTube channel, Kyle Chassé. For those watching, please subscribe. So I think both will have a huge impact in the space, allowing other crypto investors and innovators to learn from you and your experience. And I think that's incredible. So thank you for all the work you're doing in the space. And I would like to start by asking you a personal question. And that is, in your life, in your lifetime leading up to this moment, who could you point to and say had the biggest impact on you that helped you become who you are?
I mean, there's a lot of people that had an impact on shaping who I became. I mean, like most obvious would be my parents, from the beginning. I had a good friend, Taylor, who helped me kind of grow after high school, which is kind of when I really blossomed. And that, I mean, that's, you know, that, I mean, my whole family has been really great, but, you know, it was a lot of my development came from, you know, a hunger to become essentially like architect of my own life and learning how to hack my way through life essentially. And, yeah, I guess that's the best answer.
Thank you. Would you say that you are like your family, or that your family shares like a similar vision to impact their community and their world?
Yeah. So, I mean, my family doesn't really, like, they're not really, I mean, I don't think, I think a lot of, there's not a whole lot of, well, I don't know, but I mean, at least my family wasn't really community based. You know, like there wasn't, like I didn't really have any kind of community growing up. You know, I had some friends, but not like a community of any sorts. Yeah.
And do you think that had something that had like that played a role in your desire to create now the community that you're building at House of DAO?
Only in the polarizing aspect where I know what it's like to not be part of a community, and then what it's like to be part of one. But there was nothing. There was nothing that from growing up in that way. It wasn't actually until I think I had to find what kind of community I would be interested in being part of. Because I think that when you get communities, they're normally gathered around a certain type of thought process. I didn't grow up in a church. I went to sports, but, you know, I wasn't really into like we had teams and stuff like that. So, you know, but there wasn't like a whole lot of that didn't happen. That socializing didn't happen outside of the immediate practice or the game or like pizza afterwards or something. It was only until, you know, I really became kind of clear who I wanted to surround myself with and what I wanted to talk about, that then I knew what kind of community I'd want to be around. And, you know, that didn't really exist except for online. And so this is where I had the idea to create something physical.
Thank you. And when you say that and I've heard you say this before, you know, you strongly believe in being the architect of your own life. What goes into that? Like what process or what behaviors or what habits would you say are essential in designing your own life?
Well, it starts with kind of knowing what you want out of life, like what your goals are. You know, you can't know how to get where you want to go unless you know how to get there, unless you know where you're going, you know? So, for me, it was like, okay, I know that I don't want to do a 9-to-5 job. I wanted the freedom to do what I wanted to do in life. I always have had that desire to, and travel was a huge desire of mine. So understanding, you know, where you want to be in life. Like, let's say that, you know, take someone totally different than myself. Let's say that you're an artist and you love to do art. Maybe you're a painter or something. So maybe for that person, architecting their own life means that they get to do what they love to do every day and have the type of lifestyle they want to have. So maybe that means, you know, having a studio, a loft or something in San Francisco next to an art park where they can just, you know, chill in their loft and do art most of the day. And then, you know, have, you know, a successful business where they don't have to go to a job, but they can survive off just doing what they love to do. So maybe that means selling some art locally, creating an online business, things like that. So that person's kind of, you know, roadmap getting there, and but even though the objectives might be different, what you need to do is fairly the same. It's educate yourself on the things that you need to get to where you want to be. So, you know, like Learning how to make money to be financially free is important. Learning how to negotiate is important no matter what. Learning how to, how to socialize, how to get people to like you, how to learn how to learn how to figure things out. It's extremely important. And so for me, it was just reading a lot of different like self-help books, and then for me, it was really just following. Like I really just kind of found myself first interested in something, and then tried to find an opportunity to create some type of business in that thing I was interested in. For me, I've always created kind of these new things that don't exist in the world, and you don't have to do that always. That was just something that I like to do, and but I think in order for me, my philosophy is if you want to be extremely happy in life, you have to enjoy the majority of your time, especially doing the things that you do to make a living or to survive, so it's important to like not hate your job, for example. I don't think that people necessarily need to love their job, but at least enjoy what it is. And then if it's not super stressful, maybe that person can be happy in life with that. And a lot of people, don't mind having a routine type of life. Some people like that stuff. For myself, I couldn't do that. For me, I have to really enjoy what I do and be passionate about what I'm doing. And I think that's ultimately how you be the most happy and joyful with your life and feel most fulfilled, is getting to wake up and do what you love to do and know what you're doing is for a certain purpose, whatever that is to you, that is to you. But yeah, so it's really just kind of figuring out the kinds of issues that you might have in life with that roadmap or that goal that you want to achieve, and then learning what kind of obstacles might appear along the way and how do you deal with those obstacles in the best way possible. And if you develop a good skill set at all these things to overcome these obstacles, that path is going to be a lot easier to traverse than if you don't know how to deal with these things that are thrown at you.
Yeah, that's so good. And on that note, you make me think, or I'd want to ask you, could you share with us one of the most challenging obstacles or things you've had to go through in life, how you overcame, and what you took from that? I know that was a mouthful, but I think so many people could learn from hearing how you navigated through that.
Yeah, I just had to think of what was, because there's been lots of obstacles along the way, but like, what were some of the most challenging life types of obstacles? I think for me was really trying to, for me it was like, I think like being comfortable and confident in my own skin was something that I had to overcome. Growing up like in a small town, small school, was a lot of like being made fun of for being overweight and things like that. And it didn't allow me to like grow confidence or at any respect, because when you're surrounded by other kids in school who are considered the popular and cool kids that everybody looks up to, you don't know any better but to think that that's what is successful in life. Right. The high school quarterback or whatever, the high school, captain of the cheerleading team, whatever. These are what most kids at my age, anyway, in my school, would consider like, I guess, cool, but or in that term, we would translate it today to successful, which I was not. So I think that really what it took, and why I mentioned Taylor earlier, was because I need to leave that environment in order to break away from all of this judgment and remove myself from that environment in order to kind of reinvent myself. And I had an amazing kind of mentor with me who was able to kind of coach me, essentially, and I saw that he was successful in what I wanted to become, and I was very receptive to learning from him. And in one summer backpacking, I was able to kind of totally reinvent myself. And when I moved back to California, came back, my mom and I moved towns, not far away, but 20 minutes away to an entirely different city, where I didn't know anybody and nobody knew me. And so I could come back into it and reintroduce myself, and nobody knew my past. So I didn't feel bound by that.
That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I wonder, which kind of segues into my next question, is now that you're building House of DAO, a crypto-focused emerging tech community, Kopanyang, Thailand, I understand that an educational system will be part of it. Could you share what your vision would be? What is your vision for House of DAO in terms of impact and the type of people we produce, but also especially in terms of the educational system? Like what kind of human developmental environment do you hope it incorporates?
I think I think the question was, what, like, how do I imagine education? Or was there something more specific that you wanted out of that?
So I hear from you as you're sharing your story that you had a role model in your life, Taylor, someone that was able to help break you out of your shell at the time and guide you into becoming your fuller self, free of judgment. And that's clearly related to anyone stepping into like who they are fully as a person as well. So I just wonder if that's like an element, like a mentorship program, for instance, if that would be part of House of DAO, or how you see developing that educational system for students or children that are part of House of DAO.
So your question is, do I imagine a mentorship program for education?
For instance.
I think one of the interesting things about raising children in a community is that they have lots of intelligent adults who all have different skill sets. Traditionally we grow up with two parents, and they might be great at some things and not great at other things, but they might lack between both of them some severe skill sets that maybe that you want as a child, or that you think that you could benefit from. And if you grow up with just those two people, and then you don't have a lot of there's no one to teach you those things that they're not strongly skilled at. If you grow up in a community, let's say with 200 plus people, more than likely, there's going to be several people in that community that are very, very strongly skilled in certain areas. And so I think that the kids would organically gravitate to those adults in the community who have that skill set, and just observe from them and maybe ask them questions. I think this is the interesting thing about raising children in a community, is that like you have so many different opinions, you have so many different languages, so many different cultures, so many different skill sets, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens when you raise children with all of this influence and all of these different skill sets. And and then I think as it's just important to make sure that they're guided in the right direction, but it's you really want to ask, the child, what are they interested in doing? And, and then I think like a good life coach might be, is just saying, okay, like you want to know how to, ask a girl on a date, like who do you know here that's good at talking to girls? Maybe go ask them how they do it, and then they can just go ask them how to do it. If the kid wants to be super fit or be nice, be huge and strong, maybe there's some guy in there that's, jacked up, and hey, go ask Johnny how he gets all buff, maybe he'll show you how he does it. I mean, and then that, I'm sure a lot of, like, most of these people would be caring adults and more than happy to kind of have a little mentee underneath them that would, be their little shadow for a while. But I think that's something that children could tremendously benefit from.
I think that's so interesting because there's that stat or statistic that says we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So in essence, you're building this huge community of brilliant innovators, and and they're going to have children, obviously, of course. And it's just so amazing to think about how you're setting up this like brewing ground, basically, both for ideas and for human beings.
Yeah.
With like the best of the best. So that's super inspiring. I think it's incredible. It's going to be incredible to see you like flesh out and develop this community. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
My next question is one that I think many investors would be interested in knowing about you, since you've been as successful as you have. Could you first share how many altcoin projects have you invested in?
It's a difficult question because there's been tons that maybe I put some money into, but that's more like swing trading when they're already publicly traded, and then you buy some because you think that the team has potential. Now, as far as investing in projects that you get in there at a time before they become publicly traded, so you enter at like a private sale or a pre-sale or something. I guess probably around maybe 10 or 15 or something.
Perfect. Thank you. Because that sets me up for what I want to know, which is, and I would like our audience to know, which is, how do you decide which projects are worth you investing in?
Yeah. So normally, first thing is that the idea has to make sense to me. Like, there has to be a true use case, especially when you're talking about a token project, because the token has to have true utility. And like, if a team has equity and they have a token and they don't really have a token economic use case, then I just think that they need to go back to the drawing board and understand more before they try to do something. But if the idea makes sense and they understand the industry, then it's really about the team, and then I like to meet the team and just try to find out, why are they building this thing? What is their objective? Did they, are they someone that would give up in something like this last crypto winter that we have had, where we haven't had a bull run since 2017. So things have been slow and difficult, who's still building and who's given up. But, you don't always have the luxury of seeing who's been persistent for a long time, because often people are very, very early with ideas or concepts. But really, it's a lot about the team, and it's not just about their experience, although that's incredibly important. But it's like, how persistent are you and how novel is your idea? Because when I do invest, I am typically investing for a buy and hold pattern. So, where a lot of funds will, which I really don't like, but it's not the worst thing, because they get projects money, but people that are taking advantage of a situation where they're just buying very early, and then as soon as the coin is publicly traded, they'll just dump the coins. And this really usually kind of fucks up like early investors who come in, or the public that comes in. There's a lot of hype about a project. Some big VCs put money behind it. People are really excited. When it gets publicly listed, people who have been very, very interested in this project start buying in, and then the early investors just dump on the project, and everyone gets wrecked. Which is basically just the value decreases significantly, and it puts a big downer on the project. It's like, oh man, like that sucks, and people kind of lose excitement at that time. So for me, I'm someone who buys and holds. Typically, whenever I invest, I just kind of forget about the money and try not to think about the project for quite some time unless I have some sort of active role in the project, advising or something. But yeah, it's a lot about the team.
Thank you. Which projects are you currently that are not your own? So not House of DAO and not CEA, but outside of those, which projects could you share are you have you invested in early on and are advising?
I'm not advising anybody anymore. So that was in 2000. Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing any advising at the moment. Yeah, nothing right now. Okay. And we pivoted in 2020, like late 2019, stopped considering any type of advising roles and pivoted to building our own projects.
Perfect. Could you share more about which of your own projects, like just share on your own projects, like what are you building and what is so impactful about each?
I mean, this is like, this is a long conversation for both of them, and they go into a lot of in depth for both of them. But, there's two projects. One of them is the money maker. It's the thing that's the money tree that we're planting that basically will continue to generate revenue and put it into everything that we come up with as an idea to create in the future. Because the passion project, House of DAO, is incredibly ambitious and will require a tremendous amount of capital to pull it off, and resources and people and things like that. So, but, I forget who said this, but, if you want to be a billionaire, you have to be able to service 1 billion people. And, and I don't personally care to be a billionaire, but I would love to have billions of dollars to invest in projects that we're building. And so really I had to look for where did I see the biggest flaws or the biggest pain points we had as an industry as a whole. And people are wondering, what is that magic app going to be, or that magic use case that ignites the world and everyone understands all of a sudden decentralization and blockchain and altcoins and blah, blah, blah. And, I think that's incredibly difficult to do, no matter how attractive the game or app or use case might be. Really, people need to feel more comfortable with the word blockchain or crypto in general in order to start experimenting with it or dipping their toes in. In 2017, the industry earned a relatively negative perspective because of some really bad ICOs, some scams, some hacks, frauds, cons, things like that. In 2017, we acquired the kind of a reputation of the Wild Wild West, rightfully so. And when you ask the average person on the street, what do they think of crypto and blockchain? They usually think it's some of a scam, or they're very, very skeptical to even like entertain that idea a little bit further. So a lot of this negative publicity came from the exchanges. It came from crypto exchanges, lots of hacks, thefts, frauds, cons, things like Quadriga, and, where the owner, supposedly died, but people think he was faked his own death and ran away with like $200-something million of users' funds. You have Mt. Gox, which lost like, I don't know, like a couple 100,000 Bitcoin or something like that back in the day. You have Cryptopia, and you've got like all of these different exchanges that have been hacked or like serious problems with it. And that's because they're operating in the Wild Wild West in an unregulated environment, which I think is fine, but there needs to be like some type of best practices and standards that are set up. And so I kind of started looking at what does this look like? And while kind of researching this idea and speaking to different exchanges, I found out that, not a lot of exchanges are open to being transparent because a lot of them are wash trading, and I'm not going to go into the whole model of Crypto Exchange Alliance, but I'm just going to tell you for this interview that, it is a significantly more efficient solution for liquidity than exists in the world today. And if we're successful in doing it, which we're about ready to launch on September 1st, and we already have a ton of traction with about 35 exchanges, and with an aggregated liquidity greater than Binance, which is the largest exchange in the world. So if we're successful, then we've done a couple things. We've democratized the exchange space, and because if we don't exist, then there's probably going to be a massive consolidation of exchanges, and then we're no better off than we were before blockchain and that ethos of democratization. I kind of tell people that just because Starbucks exists doesn't mean that mom and pop coffee shops shouldn't exist as well. And, we want to create jobs, and we give opportunities, and we want to, by democratizing the exchange space, what you do is you allow more people to come on board, because I'll give you an example. Let's say that you have a gentleman in Ethiopia who has a business association that he runs, and there's 1,000 members in this business association. And each of the 1,000 guys has some investable income every month. And someone tells him, hey, dude, check out crypto, check out Bitcoin, check out blockchain. He goes, oh, this is really cool. And he realizes that there's not really a local exchange that can service them. And so he wants to build one. And you can get an exchange running for not a lot of money. There's a lot of white label solutions. But you have a really big barrier to entry for liquidity. And with liquidity, and liquidity just means enough buyers and sellers on an exchange that when someone places an order, someone wants to buy it or sell it. So if someone wants to sell something, that there's going to be someone on the other side that probably wants to buy it. And you need to have like hundreds of thousands, actually millions of customers on exchange in order for there to be very liquid, to have lots of buyers and sellers. But if this guy who knows 1,000 people in his business association that have never really heard of crypto before, but he's super stoked on it and wants to open an exchange, and he thinks he can onboard all 1,000 of these people, before he would have had to spend millions of dollars and that's impossible for someone there, to spend all that money on market making and liquidity providing, so that when he onboarded those customers, they actually could have their trades executed. So what we're doing in our solution, it doesn't cost anything for an exchange to join our liquidity pool, essentially what we're creating, and we just charge a commission when they earn money, so they can get started without any overhead, any capital cost. And this guy in Ethiopia can onboard his 1,000 friends, his 1,000 associates, and maybe in a first world country, that those 1,000 customers wouldn't be enough to generate enough revenue for someone in their family to have a beautiful life. But maybe in Ethiopia, that is enough for that person for him and his family to have a beautiful life. And why that's important to the crypto space is because that's now 1,001 new customers that come into the exchange space, the crypto space, that probably wouldn't have come in before. So what we're doing is enabling all these mom and pop exchanges to open up around the world and create more users overall, and that this is what's going to help speed up adoption. So we help all kinds of exchanges from different sizes, and it's really important. And it's what we're building it's vastly superior to other types of liquidity solutions in the world. So it's not something that I think it's really cool that we're doing it. But it's but for me, like, the passion project is House of DAO, but they really work well together, where one of them helps the space with adoption, but both of them do. But Crypto Exchange Alliance, the first project, will help House of DAO accelerate, much quicker than it would if we had to start from scratch, because the idea is kind of something that's never been done before. And a lot of investors are kind of wary about things that have never been done before. There's no proven, you can't really point to something and say, look, they're successful. Because yes, there's co-working spaces. Yes, there's co-living spaces, but there's nothing really where they're doing co-living, co-working, acceleration, incubating and creating this conference-like environment. Like, I don't even know any other co-working, co-living spaces that are niche oriented at all. So it's very, very new, and we are all excited to invest our capital in something like this because we believe it's worth it. We've had enough market validation from our proof of concept we had in 2018 on the same island, and we have a tremendous amount of demand already for it. We're not live yet or launched yet. It doesn't exist right now. So we have a feeling that it's going to be very successful, and because I think people are ready for a change in the world, a big change. And what we're doing in most societies doesn't produce good results. The purpose of raising a child hopefully should be so that child has a good life. You want to give them the skill sets. You want to give them the skill sets so they can be happy. But what we see in a lot of adults around the world is a lot of adults aren't happy. And that's a huge problem, right? It's a big, big, big problem. And so if what you're doing is producing bad results, you need to change it. But I don't see, the traditional systems making big changes toward the way that we raise children. So that's what we're trying to do. And also, when we incubate projects, it's about incubating very disruptive things that, make big changes in the world. And so we're really tackling evolution of the human species from multiple different angles.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share some updates that you and your team are working on right now for House of DAO?
Yeah. So one of the things that's been really interesting, and I think we're, some in this whole COVID ordeal, some benefits, some projects and companies have suffered tremendously. And some of them have profited tremendously, take Zoom or Amazon or whatever. These guys are doing really, really well because of the current conditions. We're not doing bad or good because of the current conditions, but it has actually produced interesting results where at the time that borders got closed, a lot of very interesting people either were a lot of interesting people were either stuck here or chose to stay here during this whole lockdown situation. And it's allowed people on this island to develop a community and get really close to each other. And so there's many, many different people, lots of successful people, lots of people in crypto, lots of people in digital advertising and marketing and trading and blah, blah, blah. A lot of people, when they hear about Copenhagen, they think it's they have the imagination or the impression of a full moon party. But, the people that we're surrounded with here on this island are very intelligent, smart people. And there's a lot of people here are conscious and awoke, and they really understand what we're trying to do. And so right now we're just trying to leverage some of these relationships that we've made here recently in light of the whole situation, and together, hopefully this helps, we get some support from them because a lot of people stayed here a lot longer than anticipated, but fell in love with the island, like most of us who are here today have done. So that's one update. We're looking for properties and narrowing down some, every day. I'm thinking about what is ideal for the location. Do we want to start from scratch? Do we want to, be able to move into a place on day one and get going? Do we have room to grow? What's our clientele look like? How do we get people here? Do we need to be remote in a beautiful place and island paradise, or do we need to be, in a beautiful place but centrally located? Do we need to have boats? Do we need to have a dock? What's the beach going to look like? Do we need to be on a beach? Do we need to be in a mountain? Do we need to have sea view? Do we need to be in a nice meadow? Do we need privacy? Do we not need privacy? Can we play music? Can we not? Who are the neighbors? What kind of food should we have? Are we going to cook? Are we going to order? Blah, blah, blah. So, these things are just all the time things that I'm thinking about, and they are all taken into consideration when we're looking for a property. So yeah, I've narrowed them down to a few, and I think that we're getting comfortable enough to make a decision, and that will come a lot more real once we know when borders open up and when people can start traveling again. Because right now it doesn't really make a lot of sense to take over a property when we don't know what lies ahead. You know, right now there's no sign of things letting up with these lockdowns and, you know, people becoming infected or whatever. And so we're just kind of on a hold pattern right now and really focused on CEA at the moment, you know, to get Crypto Exchange Alliance launched, because the quicker we do that, the quicker we're generating lots of revenue, and then the more options that we have for House of DAO.
Thank you. Could you share how much you're looking to invest, sorry, not invest, but fundraise for both CEA and House of DAO?
So for CEA, we're not really, I mean, we are open to receiving some more fundraising. However, we are, you know, we've raised about 2/3 of what we were looking to raise. You know, initially it was 800,000. And so we could use more, probably another, I think we would accept up to another $300,000. But we're also, it's also not like a make or break thing at this point right now. We have enough to go to market. And if we do raise more, it just means that we can launch things like security tokens quicker and derivatives markets quicker, and yeah, these kinds of things. So for House of DAO, it's really, you know, I mean, we could get going for 300,000. The more that we have, the more that we can do, you know, and really it depends on who is going to come into the project, what kind of investors are we looking for, and what are they, you know, kind of comfortable with, you know. I mean, in a perfect world, we would, you know, probably take a beautiful piece of land and build out a paradise village, you know, but I think it's important probably to start small with a proof of concept. So right now, I think ideally we'd probably raise $1 million. Yeah. And so I think from a fundraising perspective, we have a pretty wide range, and you know, we have financials to kind of describe what each of those situations look like. But you know, raising anywhere between 300,000 at the very low end, you know, probably better to do 500, and then something to like $1 million on a hard cap.
And what kind of investors are you hoping would invest in House of DAO? And what kind of, who do you hope to attract? Like,
I mean, you always want, you know, you always want smart money to come in, which smart money just means people that don't just give you money, but they add value to the project by connections, network, advice. You know, maybe they take a seat on the board, maybe they become partners, maybe they have something to offer from a service. You know, all these different things. And so that's ideal always in every situation whenever you take on money, you know. However, we're not at a place to say that we'll only accept smart money. And I think that would be silly to do that also. Like, smart money does have a benefit where you're getting usually a lot of value in addition to the actual capital that you bring in. But you know, we're fairly confident that we can do what we're trying to do without additional outside help. So, yeah, I mean, it's just because House of DAO really is a community movement, and so, you know, just what's important is attracting the right people that can invest, even if it's not capital, maybe it's a skill set or time or whatever, you know, in one way or another that really truly adds value to the whole idea of House of DAO.
good, thank you. And if someone watching wanted more concrete information, how would they go about contacting you or getting this information?
Yeah, so I mean, there's houseofdao.io, or exchangealliance.io. You can go to my Twitter, which is my name, Kyle Chassé. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, you know, or like on Telegram, CA Crypto, like Charlie Alpha Crypto.
Perfect, thank you. And on that note, back to your investor process. How did you calculate CEA's valuation?
So the valuation is based on our projected revenue over time. And right now with the traction that we have, we basically took the report or the adjusted volume from each exchange that has signed up with us so far. We made the assumption that 90% of the volume was fake, and so we reduced that by 90% as far as the volume to give a more accurate assumption of what the volume might look like. And then we took the business model, which is making the assumption that CEA is responsible for facilitating a certain percentage of cross exchange orders, from each different percentage from each small, medium, and large. And our business model is that we take 25% from each side of a trade that we help facilitate from the fees that the exchange charges their customers. So if an exchange A and B are both counterparties in a trade that we help facilitate, and they were to make $1 or charge a customer $1 transaction fee on that trade, we would take 25 cents from each side and they would each net 75 cents. And so this is kind of the assumptions that we made and the kind of way that we figured out our revenue projection forecast. And then we did a standard valuation model based on that.
Thank you. So I recently watched a talk that Vitalik gave on Ethereum. He said this. He said, in regards to projects or designing them. He said, be a technologist first, play it out logically, and an investor second, and make your decision that way. So I wonder, is that part of, I would imagine so, that's part of your process. When you created CEA, for instance, did you play it all out and then decide that this was viable, or in regards to your investments that you've made? What do you think about that statement? And
I don't have enough context from that statement to understand what he was referring to. But how I came up with how the CEA idea evolved was understanding that there was a problem somewhere. I didn't know what it was. And I didn't, initially I just saw this product. The first thing that led me to the CEA idea was we have a problem with adoption. And then it was we want the public to adopt blockchain. Why aren't they doing it? Oh, they're scared. Why are they scared? Oh, the media says that we're a bunch of scammers and hoaxers and fraudsters. Okay, that's bad. Okay, so what do we do about that? Well, we need regulators. Oh, well, blockchain's meant to be borderless. So how do you regulate an exchange just operating in Uganda that's onboarding American customers and selling securities? And then if you've got a bunch of those things all over the world, how does one nation state get the resources to try to come after all these people? And then when you start talking about decentralized exchanges and things like that, it gets even more difficult to try to stop something like that or regulate it. So I understood that my understanding was that I think most people still don't understand this, but most people still think that regulation is going to be the way to get your finger on this thing. But I strongly believe that won't work. I just think people just don't put the puzzle pieces together. They don't pay attention. Binance has had to move jurisdictions 3 times, I think, because the regulatory environment just become unfavorable there. And they're like, oh, okay, you don't want us here? See ya. We'll bring our business and taxes somewhere else. And so they just leave and go somewhere else. Now that's a centralized above ground business that, pays taxes probably in whatever jurisdiction they're in. And and has a head figure, but and they've been doing just fine, kind of operating in and out of laws and in gray zones and things like that. And but then you're going to have decentralized things. So anyway, like this is one thing about just how I came to this idea. So then I was looking for, okay, if you can't rely on regulators, then how else do you mature the industry and make people feel more comfortable about coming and trying it out? So I looked for different things that work in the world these days, and said, okay, like what is it that could work? And so I looked to the Non-GMO Verified Project, which is a nonprofit out of the States that basically puts a food packaging label on food that says that they're GMO or not, basically, or it's not. They just say that they're not GMO, and that's incredibly effective. When you have a public facing label that identify that, and it's validated by unbiased third parties, it gives consumers a quickly identifiable and easy way to make a decision if they want to participate in that or use that entity or not. So then I said, okay, well, that sounds like a good idea. Let's try initiating that thing, and but just do it for the crypto space, because we could do it for ICOs, we could do it for different projects, we could do it for exchanges, things like that. We could do it for DeFi, we could do it for whatever we want. But exchanges seemed to be the biggest problem at the time, and still are today, I think. So then I started talking to exchanges and figuring out, like, what are the problems? And would you be willing to go through a third-party audit? And I quickly realized that nobody's going to be open to that, because... And then I found out why, and I found out that they were wash trading, and then why were they doing that? Because they didn't have liquidity. And why don't they have liquidity? Because it's too expensive and doesn't exist and it's fragmented and blah, blah, blah. So, okay, so what is liquidity? I had to figure out what the fuck that was, because, I didn't really know any trading terms, or didn't really trade much myself. I just was pretty new to the whole world at the time. So I started learning about liquidity and what that was, and, why is it such a problem still? And so I looked at the systems that exist in order for liquidity to provide liquidity to exchanges. And I realized that they were antiquated and they hadn't been innovated on. And so I like to think of myself as a systems innovator. I look at the systems that exist and see how to make them better. Well, if something hasn't been innovated on much in the past 10 years, it's probably time for an update. But liquidity hadn't been updated or innovated on in 100 years. It's super antiquated. So there was a really big opportunity to try to upgrade this infrastructure. I mean, massively upgrade the infrastructure, massively, because there's just tremendous inefficiencies. And if it was efficient, then the exchanges wouldn't be facing the problems that they do, and everything I mentioned leading up to this point just now wouldn't be an issue anymore. And so, being a technologist, I mean, I love technology. I'm not really sure what Vitalik meant by that. But then you have to figure out, I mean, I've been an investor, I am an investor. So, okay, what we're building is going to take some money to do. What would make it attractive for investors? And it is incredibly attractive for investors, what we've built. I wanted to make it so. I wanted to reward people who believe in our idea. And then it just comes down to execution after that. So I don't know what the question was originally, but that's kind of how my thought process of building a business, how CEA came to be.
Thank you. So in listening to you explain your process, what I'm curious to ask and know is, upon the inception of CEA up until today now, how long have you been developing CEA?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. And from the beginning till today, has CEA pivoted, adjusted its like first milestone? Like
Yeah,
how and how did you come about that validation?
Tremendous. I mean, we've pivoted, not a tremendous pivot, but tons of fine tuning. It's funny. Like the idea wasn't something I just wasn't something that I just woke up one day and said, "Oh, this should be done." It was actually one of the guests that we were hosting at the House of DAO proof of concept that I built out in 2018. He was building an exchange and said, "Yeah, like we need to do this thing and aggregate orders and build an arbitrage bot." Basically, I didn't know what arbitrage was. I didn't know what aggregating orders meant or any of that stuff. But I understood that there was a problem with liquidity for new exchanges. Like that's what I understood. And I don't think he used the word arbitrage either. So Dennis, hi Dennis, if you're listening out there, Dennis, he had this idea, but because Dennis is a developer, and trust me, Dennis has matured, has grown out of his shell the past 2 years tremendously. But at the time, he was still very much a developer, and spoke like a developer and communicated like one, which leaves a lot of room for ambiguity and just what did he mean by that? So for the first, he had this idea, and I'm like, that sounds great. Let's try doing this thing. But the whole time, the first 3 months or whatever we were working on it, I thought we were going to do this one way, and essentially that's the way that it has become today. He meant doing it in an arbitrage solution, which arbitrage had already existed. It was nothing new or innovative, and I said, I was really insistent on not going that route because lots of people have been doing it, and it doesn't like the idea that I created in my mind from the story he told me was actually what CEA became, which was something that no one else did, and I don't know why no one else did it. I guess I think the magic of it was creating this alliance idea where everybody was participating and creating the thing that was really really unique about it was creating an ecosystem where everybody wins from this environment. That's really special about CEA. Everybody that joins benefits, and this is why we have so much success with onboarding new exchanges, because everybody benefits and it doesn't cost anyone to join. So why would anyone not? It's a really good business model. But we have revised our deck probably 500 times by now. It's almost a daily occurrence, and that's just fine tuning from every phone call that we have, the more questions that we have, new technology partners, new exchanges onboarding, changing the roadmap. And this is just a process of learning from speaking to investors and speaking to exchanges and developers and operators. And initially it was a lot of devil's advocate. It's like, well, what are you gonna do if this happens? I was like, shit, I don't know. Better figure that out. So then we go figure it out. What if that happens? What is that? What are you talking about? Then I have to go learn what that was, and how to deal with that problem. So it has been a tremendous amount of fine tuning and adjusting, rebuilding the deck, tearing it down, building it again, tearing it down, building it again. Trying to figure out where to focus, trying to make sure that we're not jumping the gun and going to market too soon before we're actually ready. Do we build from scratch? Do we not build from scratch? Which technology partners are trying to screw us over? Which are really genuinely trying to partner with us? Should we spend money here? Should we spend money there? So there's been a lot of fine tuning and adjusting, not a tremendous amount of pivoting. The story that produced in my head when Dennis told me the idea turned out to be what we've built, and so it's been pretty straight on as far as what we set out to do, but we really had to figure out how to get there.
Very interesting. So it sounds like absolutely all of your experience as an entrepreneur, even before crypto, and then all your continued conversations with different experts in their areas as they pertain to CEA, whether it's technology or, you know, all the different angles that I can't even begin to like wrap my head around. It sounds like you connect the dots like between them all, right? And I don't know who said it. I don't know. I think it's just like a known fact, but that is like we only know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So I just wonder, like, based on that like premise, if what you produce and what you're currently producing is in many ways a result of everything you've learned and continue to learn and apply, what are you learning now? Or what do you feel you should, are you interested in learning more about?
I mean, I learn every day, you know. I have phone calls every single day with different types of people, whether they're, you know, like right now I'm learning about multi-party computation and like why that's interesting and how that changes the game for blockchain, you know. I mean, it depends on it's I've had to learn everything that exists in CEA. I had to learn about, you know, I didn't know anything about exchanges really when I first started out. I didn't know what liquidity was. I didn't know what order books were. I didn't know what market depth was. I didn't know what smart order routing was. I didn't know, you know, any of these things. I didn't know, you know, there's so much I didn't know about initially that, you know, I had to learn, or I wanted to learn, you know, to solve this problem. And I learned what I'm focused on. You know, I'm learning what I'm focused on. So if we need to figure out how to connect technology, one part of technology, to this other part of technology, and then we need to build the messaging system between those things, like, okay, how do we do that? Let's learn about that. So right now it's a lot of focused learning on the things that we're working on, you know, and where is my attention best spent at this time, you know, until Crypto Exchange Alliance is live and has a really strong team behind it and allows me to shift my attention more to, say, House of DAO, for example. This is where I will be learning right now and where I will be spending the predominant amount of my time. I mean, I really don't, I mean, I don't even really, like someone, you know, a lot of people ask me, you know, have you heard of so-and-so project? I'm like, yeah, but I don't know, like, oh, what do you think about it? I don't know. Like, I just don't have time to learn about it right now, you know? So, and I don't even, you know, I don't even, I'm not really even looking at other investments right now because I'm just focused on my company, you know, what we're building here.
And do you think that if a project has to pivot, is that a sign? Like, is that a sign of like the project not being a worthwhile project? Because it sounds like you've fine-tuned, that's what you said, those are the words you use, you've fine-tuned CEA. But it also sounds like once you knew it was a worthy project, it sounds like all your additional learning and research and validation like validated it, and there was no pivoting. But for new innovators, as there will be continuously more and more and more in the space as it continues to mature, like what best advice could you give them when they think like, like this is a project, or I want to do this, or I want to do that?
Yeah, I think that I should probably clarify to what extent we're talking about when we use the word pivot. So like we had to pivot when we were looking at it was I don't know, it's hard to say. This is a bit like, I think pivoting is great first of all.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that like it's actually one of the words that I actually like to hear when I've invested in a project that I'm looking for an update. You know, unless they're like, yeah, we're solid, we're fucking rocking, like life is great, we're doing amazing, which is rare ever to hear from projects that are so new. It's nice to hear someone say, yeah, we were going this way, which was the trend, or which is where we should have been going when we started. However, the market has shifted, because in crypto, you have to remember, 1 week is like 1 year in the traditional world. Things move so quickly that you have to pivot in a way. If we didn't launch Crypto Exchange Alliance this year, if we try to do this in 2 or 3 years from now, even if nobody else built it, it might not be relevant at that time. You know, maybe decentralized exchanges evolved so much at that point that really centralized exchanges just started looking like dinosaurs, where people were using them less and less and less. But I'm always someone who has been traditionally too early to things. I started a Bitcoin-based lottery in 2013. It was too early. I've done other things in my life that were too early. And so I've learned how to kind of fine-tune my timing. But I'm always looking ahead to see what the future trends are and how we can adapt to those kinds of things. And so as decentralized exchanges have been exploding in growth the past couple months, I have put that to the kind of front of my attention and saying, okay, how can CEA pivot into that market? After we launch our spot trading product, does it still make sense to go to derivatives next, then securities, then decentralized exchanges? Where's the most demand going to be? And right now, it's not super important for me to make that decision until we're live with spot trading. But it's something that I'm now contemplating is the roadmap. Where is the best use of our time to service the most demand? I love the word pivot, and I love when people use it. It just means that they're paying attention.
Okay. That's a good clarification. Thank you.
Unless they pivot in the wrong direction, of course, like grossly misunderstand their market or something. And they're like, yeah, we pivoted. I've had projects pivot in the wrong direction before. I've invested in projects that have pivoted in the wrong way. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Why would you revert to dinosaurs, when we're really trying to look for aliens, wrong direction, dude. Yeah, I've had this happen before. Yeah. I've had a couple projects before that came out of the crypto space and went to more traditional spaces, especially in the financial world. One of the projects that we invested in, Pulse, I think it was not a bad idea to pivot out of crypto space temporarily with the intention to get back in it, at the time. But I had one finance product that pivoted away from crypto and went to traditional, and it was a horrible mistake. And I told him, what are you doing? He just didn't get it.
Wow. So you lead me to think, a moment ago, you shared, of all the dark spaces, the negative PR basically is what I'm getting at, along with wash trading and the lack of liquidity. It's a negative PR hurdle that needs to be addressed in order to allow for mass adoption. So on that note, I would just want to hear more from you about what you intend and would like to specifically promote through your YouTube channel and your podcast. Is it to address this negative PR, or is it for other specific purposes?
No, it's not for negative PR. In 2017, I saw the space evolving in a direction I didn't like to see it evolving into. A lot of people came into the space for the wrong reasons. They wanted a Lamborghini. They were calling tokens stocks, and they just had no idea what they're talking about. And people were giving money to terrible projects and blah, blah, blah. People started using phrases like security tokens are the new ICO and they're much better, more popular, and blah blah blah. This is, really all of this is toxic for the space, and not in a way that's like none of that would make public feel uncomfortable. But I know from a fundamental perspective, it's toxic for decentralization as an idea. And so really in 2018, I decided that what I wanted to do was like speak out against misinformation, educate, and just share what I know and try to make sure that people are paying attention to the right things. So this is like what I want to achieve from any of my social media or outlets or something like that.
Correcting the record, basically.
Yeah, and educating too, like just saying new things and just whatever, I mean, trying to get people to understand that this is a lot more than just taking advantage of the transfer of wealth that's happening from all the assets in the world into digital assets, which is tremendous opportunity. But there's so much more to it than just that.
Thank you. So I want to bring this interview and conversation to a close, but before we do, I heard you share, I think just in passing, I don't remember who you were speaking to, but you said that in light of what's going on in the world right now with the lockdowns and the incessant printing of money and the explosive inflation of the US dollar, and then speculations on when the market's going to finally collapse, which will happen. But you said something that I want clarification on, which is that there are theories that say that actually the dollar may just get stronger, or may not.
Dollar milkshake theory.
Okay, there we go. Could you share more about this?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually something that I recently learned, because you would think that typically the more that there is of something, the less valuable it becomes. You have supply and demand, which determines the value of something. And if the demand would stay constant for something, but the supply were to increase dramatically, the price would come down for it. And this is kind of what a lot of people speculated would happen to the US dollar. And I was in that boat. I thought for sure the dollar was going to crash and collapse because we're printing so damn much of it. But as every other country in the world is also printing their own money and there's not so much demand for that, everyone feels more secure trying to change their Mexican peso or Russian ruble or Turkish lira, whatever. They all would rather have dollars than that local fiat currency. And a lot of people just don't know about safe haven assets like gold or whatever, Bitcoin, for example. And so they are trying to acquire dollars. And so if the rest of the world was still doing really well and their currencies were holding up well, but the United States was in the same position that it is now, where it's printing tons of money, we would probably see a different story. But right now, there's a really big demand for US dollars. And so because there's a lot of demand and the demand is growing, they can print more and get away with it and still keep the value fairly high. So I don't think it's something that can last forever. And that actually works against, the way that's what's happening, that actually will end up hurting the United States in the long run. In the interim, it keeps the dollar strong. But what happens when your currency is stronger, it gets continually stronger than the rest of the world, is you become very unattractive to deal with. If I'm going to import some Ford trucks and I live in Europe, and let's just say that it was 1-to-1. It's not, but let's say it was 1-to-1, €1 to $1, and all of a sudden the dollar stayed strong and the euro dropped by 50%. Now that Ford truck becomes 50% more expensive, which becomes unaffordable for most. And even slight variations can mean a major change in the demand of something. I think the Thai baht increased by 3% or something over or a very small percent of strength gained this year, and it caused a massive reduction in their GDP from exports because people said, "Oh shit, that's more expensive now. Let me go look at India or something or Africa for those same goods because now they're more expensive from Thailand." So Thailand's looking on how they can make their baht weaker actually right now. And so while this might be nice for an American who's looking to travel somewhere because things will be cheaper, it really will hurt the country in the long run. So in the interim, the community, the economy, the markets, not the economy is shit, but the markets are strong and the dollar is strong because of all the inflation and printing from the Fed. But ultimately that will end up hurting the country. So we'll probably see a massive recession, depression, even worse, probably in 1 to 2 years as this whole thing kind of settles in.
Thank you. And could you share what impact you hope to leave on Thailand since you're based here in Thailand and are going to be building and fleshing out House of DAO here as well? What impact do you hope to have on the country?
So I've been saying for a long time that that this is an opportunity now with this whole wealth transfer and this new creation of this new asset class for small entities to leapfrog into a more dominant position. You have someone, you could have, let's say you have Bob who has $1 million in the bank account, and you have Fred who has $10,000 in his bank account. And Bob is comfortable. He's not really looking for opportunity. And so he's just going about his life. And Fred is looking for opportunity. And Fred takes a risk on Bitcoin, and he puts all of his $10,000 into Bitcoin in 2010, 11, 12, even today. And now if that asset increases 1,000x, or like I was talking about, tens of thousands of times increase, or no, not tens of percentages of increase, now Fred has a higher net worth than Bob does. And it took a very short amount of time for that to happen. That same scenario can happen to countries as well. And so right now, all of the very, very small countries in the world who have a less bureaucratic system with a smaller amount of people who can make decisions faster and change the rules have an ability to implement a set of rules and laws that allow, and not just allow, but encourage innovation, especially when it comes to blockchain and digital assets. If a country adopts these things and allows people to come into the country and safely innovate without fear of prosecution, and creates a nice tax incentive structure, they are going to really put themselves on the map for innovation. And this is what I hope to achieve for Thailand. We're working with the government now a bit, and we really want to help them see this and make it easier for people to come in, easier for visas. They already have a portal or sandbox for ICOs and STOs, but it's not developed very well. It was the first country in the world to do it, but they didn't market it very well either. And so we're trying to help them, how to market and how to kind of get the word out there and how to improve it as well. So we would like to make Copenhagen the kind of epicenter of crypto blockchain island. And, that those laws and rules, could be extended to the rest of the country. But if we, I would be glad if it happened in the entire country, quick. But if we could start with Copenhagen, maybe make it like a special economic zone or something that allows it to happen, that would be very good for the country, very good for us. the reason I moved out of the States was because I wanted to create disruptive systems that, probably wouldn't be allowed to happen the way I want to do them in the States, for example. So if this happens, you bring a lot of business, intelligence, money, technology, innovation into a country that was once a third world country, and help them to really evolve into a much, wealthier country, better education, better quality of life, things like that.
Beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. And I would hope that all the innovators that get to hear this would feel encouraged and inspired to move here, because it's like the perfect country for this innovation. It welcomes it. So beautiful. So my last question, and with this question we'll wrap it up, and that is, what do you hope your legacy be in your lifetime?
Well, I hope to be able to live forever. So I hope to have several legacies in this lifetime. But I want to be responsible for evolving the human species to a place that I believe is more civilized, mature. A world where everybody born on the planet has an equal opportunity, where we kind of abolish poverty and hunger, eliminate, severely eliminate evil by reducing the ability for people to be greedy, by making better systems that, economically incentivize people to be better for the systems in which they participate in, things like that. So that might sound, I know it sounds incredibly ambitious and like a very utopian, but I believe I can do a lot of that given the resources and, and have other people to help me, bring that to light.
That's massive.
Yeah.
And I hope you accomplish it.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your insight and all those insiders in your mind that guide your decisions and have guided your investments so far. So thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And that's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. It's been good. It's been great. But we gotta get the fuck out of here. Cause we going to Wynam, baby. Rupert, what are you going on? So bored.
It's that Bitcoin chain.
Rupert, come on, let's get it right on! Super bored. See ya!